Galactic Arena cheers turn to shock when a human warrior steps into the ring. Best HFY stories. The crowd roared as the next match in the Galactic Arena was about to begin. Aliens from hundreds of different worlds filled the massive stands, their cheers a deafening chorus. The arena itself was a marvel of intergalactic engineering, a vast coliseum suspended in space, its transparent walls offering a breathtaking view of the distant stars. Combatants from all across the galaxy had come to prove their might, and the air was electric with anticipation. Today, however, the eyes of the audience were drawn to an unfamiliar figure stepping into the center of the ring, a human. The buzz in the stands shifted from excitement to disbelief. Humans were rare in the Galactic Arena, typically regarded as a primitive and weak species by the galaxy's more advanced civilizations. Yet here stood one, clad in simple, worn armor, his expression calm as he surveyed the arena. His name was Marcus Kane, a former soldier from Earth who had somehow found his way into the greatest fighting spectacle in the universe. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. And now, the challenger from Earth, a warrior unlike any other, a human with the heart of a lion, Marcus Kane. The crowd hesitated for a moment, their cheers faltering. Some snickered, others exchanged skeptical glances. This human was about to face an opponent from Zogger, a hulking, 7-foot-tall beast of muscle and bone. The Zogger were renowned for their brute strength, their thick hides practically impervious to most weapons. "Let's see how long this human lasts," a voice muttered from the crowd. Marcus didn't react, he simply stood tall, fists clenched at his sides, his eyes focused on his opponent. The Zogger warrior, Garvok, snarled as he stepped into the ring, cracking his knuckles, his monstrous form casting a long shadow over the human. The bell rang, signaling the start of the match. Garvok charged with terrifying speed, his fists raised to deliver a crushing blow. Marcus didn't move. The crowd leaned forward, eager to witness the inevitable. And then, in the blink of an eye, Marcus did the unthinkable. With a speed and precision that left the audience gasping, he sidestepped Garvok's punch, ducked low, and swept the Zogger's legs from under him. The massive beast crashed to the ground with a resounding thud. A stunned silence fell over the arena. Garvok scrambled to his feet, his eyes burning with fury. He lunged again, but Marcus was already there, his footwork a blur, dodging and weaving with an agility that defied all expectations. It was as if the human had studied the Zogger's every move and knew exactly what to expect. The crowd's disbelief began to shift into a mixture of awe and confusion. Humans were not supposed to move like this. They were not supposed to fight like this. The Zogger roared in frustration, throwing wild, desperate punches, but Marcus was calm, almost detached, each movement fluid and calculated. He blocked a punch, countered with a sharp elbow to Garvok's ribs, and then, without warning, leaped into the air and delivered a devastating kick to the Zogger's head. Garvok stumbled, dazed, and fell to his knees. The human stood over him, breathing steady, his expression unchanged. He had not broken a sweat. The arena was silent. Then, slowly, like a wave, the cheers began to rise, tentative at first, and then louder and louder. The crowd could not deny what they had just witnessed. A human, a species they had thought weak and inferior, had just bested one of the galaxy's most feared warriors in mere seconds. The announcer's voice echoed through the stadium, barely containing his disbelief. "Victory to Marcus Kane, the human from Earth." Marcus raised his hand in acknowledgement, but there was no showmanship in his gesture. He had fought not for glory, but because it was necessary. The human species had been underestimated for too long. As he turned to leave the ring, the crowd was still in shock, their opinions of humanity forever changed. Marcus didn't need their adulation. He had come to the Galactic Arena with one goal, to prove that humans were not to be underestimated. And, in that moment, he had succeeded. The cheers grew louder, and a new respect for humanity began to spread throughout the galaxy. From that day forward, no one in the Galactic Arena would dare dismiss a human warrior again. The stories of Marcus Kane, the human who had turned the tide in the Galactic Arena, spread across the stars, inspiring countless others who had once been considered too weak to fight. Humanity's place in the universe was no longer a question, it was a certainty. And the galaxy would soon learn that when a human steps into the ring, It is not their size or their strength that defines them, it is their will to survive. The human legacy. Weeks passed, and the story of Marcus Kane's victory in the Galactic Arena became legend. Warriors from every corner of the galaxy had witnessed the unthinkable, an Earthling defeating one of the most fearsome fighters in the known universe. But as much as Marcus's victory was celebrated, whispers began to spread. Could the success of one human be replicated? Was it just a fluke? Or was humanity truly more dangerous than anyone had realized? The Galactic Arena, a place where fighters sought fame and fortune, had always been a proving ground for the strongest, the deadliest, and the most skilled. Each battle brought in millions of spectators, their eyes glued to the brutal matches where life and death often teetered on a single blow. But now, the very concept of strength was under scrutiny. For the first time in the arena's long history, a tournament was announced specifically for humanity, a challenge to prove once and for all whether Marcus Kane's victory was the work of a rare outlier or if all humans possessed an untapped potential for greatness. The announcement sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Mixed emotions rippled through the audience. Some were excited, hoping to see another human rise to the challenge, while others scoffed at the idea of humans ever being a match for true extraterrestrial power. A date was set for the first ever human galactic tournament, and fighters from across the galaxy watched closely. They knew this would either prove that humans were little more than an anomaly, or they would solidify their place in the arena forever. Either way, the stakes were high. Days later, a new human, an Earthling by the name of Emily Cross, stepped into the ring. She was tall and athletic, but she bore no marks of a galactic warrior. Her background was in military strategy, not hand-to-hand combat, and she had no otherworldly enhancements like some of the contestants. Her appearance alone made her an easy target for those who underestimated her. Emily was an enigma. She had been a soldier in Earth's Interstellar Defense Force, a strategist whose mind was just as dangerous as any weapon. Despite her lack of combat experience in the arena, she wasn't intimidated. When asked how she felt about the upcoming tournament, she simply said, "We're not here to impress you, we're here to win." Her first match was against a Toryx, a reptilian creature with scales as hard as steel. The Toryx's roar shook the arena, and its sharp claws gleamed under the arena lights. The crowd cheered, confident that the human would soon be nothing more than a smear on the floor. But Emily Cross was not just any human. She had studied the fighting styles of her opponents, learning their weaknesses, their moves, their strategies. She knew the Toryx relied on brute force and overwhelming aggression, and that was exactly how she would defeat it. As the match began, the Toryx charged at her, its jaws snapping with savage hunger, but Emily didn't flinch. She sidestepped its attack and used the Toryx's own momentum to throw it off balance. With a swift twist, she locked the creature in a submission hold, twisting its neck just enough to immobilize it. The Toryx growled in frustration, but Emily maintained her grip, using the creature's size and strength against it. The crowd was stunned. The Toryx had been neutralized in mere seconds. "Victory to Emily Cross," the announcer's voice rang out. The arena erupted in shocked silence, and then, like a wave, the cheers began. They weren't the raucous, mocking jeers they had directed at Marcus Kane. This time, the cheers were genuine. They respected what they had just witnessed, a human using not brute force, but intelligence and precision to defeat an overwhelmingly stronger opponent. As the tournament progressed, Emily's victories piled up. Her opponents, each more intimidating than the last, fell one by one. The galaxy's strongest fighters, the ones who had been so sure of their superiority, began to realize that there was something different about humanity. Each human that stepped into the ring wasn't merely fighting for glory. They were fighting with the purpose of survival, the grit of a species that had always been underestimated. With each battle, Emily Cross embodied the truth that Marcus Kane had first shown the universe, that humans didn't need to be the biggest, the strongest, or the most technologically advanced. What made them dangerous was their unyielding will to survive and adapt. Finally, the tournament reached its apex, the last battle. Emily Cross stood across from a massive Mephalon, a creature composed entirely of living metal. The Mephalon was impervious to most weapons and had a nearly indestructible body. It was a perfect opponent for a grand finale, a seemingly invincible force that few dared challenge. The Mephalon's form glowed with a sinister, metallic sheen, its glowing eyes fixed on Emily. The audience was silent, waiting for the human to make her move. Emily took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the Mephalon's armor. She knew that direct combat would be a death sentence. She had no choice but to outthink it, to exploit any flaw, any weakness. The battle began, and the Mephalon surged forward, its limbs moving with terrifying speed and precision. Emily darted in and out of its reach, looking for an opening. Every strike she launched seemed to bounce off the Mephalon's metal frame. The crowd held its breath. But then Emily spotted it, a small, vulnerable seam at the Mephalon's core, a weakness that, if exploited, would be enough to cripple it. She dodged another strike and, in one fluid motion, jumped onto the Mephalon's back, climbing toward the seam. The Mephalon, enraged, tried to throw her off, but Emily held firm. With one final effort, she drove her knife, an ancient weapon from Earth, into the seam, targeting the heart of the creature's power source. The Mephalon froze, its glowing eyes flickering. The arena went completely still. Then, with a deafening screech, the Mephalon collapsed, its metal frame crumbling to the ground. "Victory to Emily Cross," the announcer shouted in disbelief. The crowd erupted in applause, this time not just out of respect but out of a newfound understanding. Humans had proven themselves, again, not by their size or strength, but by their ingenuity, their adaptability, and their unshakable determination. After the tournament, Marcus Kane and Emily Cross met briefly in the winner's circle. They exchanged a simple nod, a mutual recognition. Both had achieved what many thought impossible, and in that moment, they understood, humanity wasn't just a species of survivors. They were fighters, in every sense of the word. The galaxy, once so confident in its superiority, now knew that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and from that day forward, no one in the galactic arena would ever underestimate the humans again. They weren't just visitors to the stars, they were here to stay. The human uprising. The Galactic Arena tournament was over, but the ripple effects of Marcus Kane and Emily Cross's victories had just begun to spread across the galaxy. The galaxy was abuzz with excitement, shock, and in some corners, fear. Humanity, once dismissed as weak and insignificant, had proven themselves in the most public way possible, and the universe was now paying attention. Across the galaxy, other human fighters, soldiers, explorers, even civilians who had trained in secret, began to emerge. Many had been inspired by Marcus and Emily's triumphs, while others, seeing the shifting tides, realized that humanity's true power lay not in their numbers but in their resilience and ingenuity. No longer content to be relegated to backwater planets, they began to carve a place for themselves, not just in the arena, but in the very fabric of galactic politics and warfare. The first sign of change came when a human faction, calling themselves the Sons of Earth, began to form alliances with smaller alien nations. They promised protection and shared technology, positioning themselves as a voice of reason and unity among the oppressed species of the galaxy. The galaxy's ruling elite, composed of the most powerful and ancient civilizations, watched warily as this new alliance grew in strength. The High Council of the Galactic Union, the governing body of the galaxy, took notice. For millennia, they had maintained control over the galaxy's vast resources, using military strength and advanced technology to keep species in line. The emergence of the humans threatened that delicate balance. Despite the victories of Marcus and Emily, many in the council still believed humans were a fluke, a series of lucky victories that could be written off as nothing more than an anomaly. But the growing influence of humans could no longer be ignored. It was on a crisp, starlit evening that the human revolution began. The first move wasn't a military one, but a declaration. A broadcast, originating from Earth, was sent out across every communication channel in the galaxy. It was short, powerful, and to the point. A human voice, calm but unyielding, echoed across the stars. "We are humans. We have survived. We have fought. And we will no longer be passive participants in the galaxy's history. We are not a species to be underestimated. Our future is our own, and we will no longer bow to the ruling elite. To the galaxy, we say this: prepare for a new era." The broadcast ended, but its impact was immediate. The council convened in an emergency session. The leaders of the galaxy's most powerful species, those who had long seen humanity as a mere curiosity, now felt a flicker of genuine concern. They had never thought much of humans. Now, they realized they had underestimated a species that was not only capable of surviving but thriving in the most extreme conditions. What had once seemed like a quaint novelty was now a rising force. "Perhaps we should have acted sooner," muttered Zatar, a representative of the Zagar species, who had witnessed Marcus Kane's first fight. He had been among the most vocal in ridiculing the human victories. "We can no longer afford to dismiss them," said Tvasha, a high-ranking diplomat of the Calthar, an ancient and highly intellectual race. "Their military prowess is not to be underestimated. And their alliances," she trailed off, glancing at the holographic map showing the expansion of human influence across the galaxy. "We have two choices," said Volner, the supreme leader of the Galactic Union. "We can try to contain them, forcefully if necessary, or we can attempt to integrate them into the existing structure of power. But if we wait too long, they may force our hand." On the outskirts of the galaxy, humanity's presence grew even stronger. Fleet after fleet, equipped with advanced Earth-made technology, began to appear in the neutral zones. They weren't just fighters, they were diplomats, negotiators, and strategists. They began brokering deals, offering trade and knowledge, and in return, they gained influence in political systems that had previously refused to acknowledge their existence. But the High Council would not be so easily swayed. In response to the growing threat, they began to rally their own forces. Large fleets from the Union's most powerful species were mobilized. Their mission clear: contain the human uprising. Diplomacy had failed. It was time to bring the full force of the galaxy down on Earth and its allies. The first strike came quickly. A fleet of Galactic Union ships, led by a Calthar flagship, arrived at Earth's orbit. Their mission: intimidate and assert dominance. Perhaps force the humans into submission before they could grow any bolder. They opened a channel to Earth's central command. "We are the Calthar. The Galactic Union has decided that your kind's insubordination will no longer be tolerated. Stand down and submit to our authority." For a moment, there was only silence on the other end. Then, a voice came through. It was a human voice, calm but resolute, a voice that carried the weight of all humanity's resolve. "We will never kneel to you. If you want a fight, you've got one, but be warned, you'll find we are not the weak, fragile species you once thought us to be." The Calthar fleet commander sneered. "You will regret this, human." Moments later, the first shot was fired. The Battle of Earth began. What followed was a galactic conflict that would come to be known as the Human Uprising. The humans fought with every ounce of their strength and cunning, outmaneuvering the Union forces at every turn. Their ships, once primitive by galactic standards, now boasted advanced shielding and weapons far beyond what had been expected. Earth's alliance with smaller species also played a critical role, as they provided vital reinforcements. As the battle raged on, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The humans, once dismissed as insignificant, had turned the tide in a conflict that threatened to reshape the entire galaxy. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their place in the stars. With every victory, humanity proved that it was not only capable of defending its home, but could challenge the mightiest forces the galaxy had ever known. The Union's fleets began to retreat, unable to withstand the human onslaught. The High Council, realizing their mistake, had no choice but to offer terms of peace. A new era began the moment the High Council officially recognized humanity's sovereignty. Earth, and its new allies, were granted a seat at the table. The Galactic Union would no longer rule over them. Humanity would shape their own destiny. The legacy of Marcus Kane and Emily Cross had proven that humans were more than just survivors, they were conquerors in their own right. And as they looked out into the stars, they knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had underestimated them once. They would never make that mistake again. The human ascendants. The galaxy was forever changed after the human uprising. No longer a forgotten species at the edge of the known universe, humanity had forced its way to the center stage of galactic politics. Earth and its allies were granted a seat in the High Council, and their influence quickly spread. No longer would the powerful species of the galaxy make decisions for them. Humans had proven their worth, not just as fighters, but as thinkers, leaders, and negotiators. But even as humanity took its place among the stars, new challenges began to emerge. The High Council, now forced to contend with the rise of Earth's power, became a battleground of its own. While some members reluctantly acknowledged humanity's strength, others, particularly the older, more conservative species, resented the change. They would not accept a galaxy where humans shared equal footing. The first sign of real friction came in the form of the Zorvith Empire, an ancient species that controlled vast swaths of space. The Zorvith had long been one of the galaxy's dominant powers. They had been among the most vocal in opposing humanity's rapid rise, seeing the humans as a destabilizing force. Lord Kale, the ruler of the Zorvith, was a master manipulator, a seasoned political player. He had watched the humans' ascension with growing frustration, believing that their rapid success was the result of luck and chaos rather than true power. His vision of the galaxy was one of order, one where the old guard retained control and new species knew their place. The Zorvith began to secretly gather allies among the more conservative factions of the Galactic Union, and it wasn't long before murmurs of a covert alliance began to circulate. Their goal was simple: prevent humanity from gaining too much power. The first move was subtle, a series of economic sanctions disguised as diplomatic disagreements. These sanctions were aimed at weakening Earth's alliances, particularly with the smaller, newer species that had joined their cause. The Union hoped to isolate Earth, force it to play by the established rules, and prevent further expansion. Meanwhile, on Earth, Marcus Kane and Emily Cross had become symbols of human unity. Both were hailed as heroes, not just for their combat skills but for their leadership in times of crisis. Marcus, though content to live a quieter life, had become the face of humanity's military, frequently called upon for advice and strategy in matters of defense. Emily, meanwhile, had become a rising star in galactic diplomacy, using her quick mind and experience in the arena to broker peace deals and navigate the political complexities of the galactic stage. But as tensions began to rise, it was Emily who recognized the danger. She saw the subtle shifts in the political landscape, the slow tightening of the noose around Earth's alliances. She warned Marcus and the Council that the Zorvith were not acting alone. They were playing a dangerous game of divide and conquer. "We cannot let them fracture us," Emily said, looking out across the gathering of human leaders. "If we are divided, if we allow ourselves to be distracted by their tactics, the galaxy will view us as weak. We must stand united, or we will fall." Her words were a rallying cry. The human people rallied around her. But even she knew that words alone would not be enough to face the growing threat. Behind the scenes, Marcus Kane began to assemble a covert task force, drawing from humanity's best soldiers, intelligence officers, and strategists. Their mission was clear: uncover the full extent of the Zorvith's plans and expose them before they could fully execute their scheme. The first real conflict came when a Zorvith fleet, under the guise of a peacekeeping mission, arrived in a strategic neutral zone near human-controlled space. They were accompanied by several of their newfound allies, including some disgruntled species who resented humanity's rapid rise. At first, it seemed like a routine mission, but within hours of their arrival, several human colonies went dark, their communications cut off without explanation. Emily Cross was among the first to act. She immediately ordered an investigation, and Marcus Kane mobilized a fleet of human ships to head toward the neutral zone. Within hours, human intelligence officers uncovered the truth: the Zorvith and their allies had been sabotaging the colonies, using sleeper agents and covert technology to infiltrate and destabilize the region. The Zorvith had made their move. What followed was a swift series of military engagements. The humans, despite their relatively small fleet compared to the Zorvith and their allies, fought with unmatched precision. Marcus, Emily, and the leadership of Earth worked together seamlessly, coordinating forces from Earth, its allies, and other sympathetic species who had begun to rally to their cause. In the neutral zone, a brutal battle took place. Zorvith warships, larger and more heavily armed, clashed with the fast-moving human fleet. But the humans had a trick the Zorvith did not anticipate: strategy. Marcus, using his knowledge of Zorvith tactics, led a series of surprise strikes that crippled their supply lines. Emily's diplomatic efforts ensured that more neutral species joined the fight, pushing the Zorvith into a desperate retreat. It was a pivotal moment. The tide of the conflict was shifting, and humanity's resolve was clearer than ever. The Zorvith had underestimated the unity and resourcefulness of the human race. just as so many had before them. Back in the heart of the Galactic Union, the High Council convened once again. This time, however, there was no debate about humanity's place. The humans had proven themselves not just capable of fighting back, but of leading an entire galaxy through a crisis. It was clear that they could no longer be ignored. The Zorvith, realizing their plan had failed and that they would be further isolated, agreed to a tense ceasefire. The Council voted overwhelmingly to expel them from any position of power and to formally acknowledge humanity's newfound position as a key player in galactic affairs. But the victory did not come without a cost. The human race had been forced to fight for every inch of their future. The scars from the conflict were deep, both politically and militarily, but it was a cost humanity had been willing to pay. As the dust settled and peace talks began, Marcus and Emily stood side by side. They had seen their people through the worst, and now it was time for a new chapter to begin. "We've come a long way," Marcus said, looking out at the stars from the balcony of the council building. "But this is just the start. We've got a universe to reshape, and we're not stopping now." Emily nodded, her eyes steady. "Humanity's place in the stars is no longer a question. It's a certainty, and we'll fight for it every day." The galaxy had once underestimated them, but no longer. Humanity had risen, and now it would lead the way into a future unlike any the stars had ever known. The dawn of humanity's empire. In the aftermath of the Zorvith conflict, the galaxy was irrevocably changed. With humanity's triumph, the old power structures began to crumble. The High Council's authority was fractured, and in its place, a new force emerged, a coalition of human-led factions that now looked to reshape the galaxy. What had once been a series of fractured species and fractured ideologies now seemed poised for a new era, one where humanity's values of unity, adaptability, and strength would be the cornerstone. Yet, as Marcus Kane and Emily Cross stood victorious, a new and unexpected challenge emerged. The victory had come with unforeseen consequences. Humanity, it seemed, had caught the attention of forces far beyond the reach of the Galactic Union. In the farthest reaches of known space, beyond the most distant stars charted by even the most daring explorers, a shadow moved. It was ancient, far older than any known civilization, and its influence stretched across galaxies. These were the WYRM Lords, an enigmatic race of near-immortal beings who had watched the rise and fall of countless empires across the stars. For millennia, the WYRM Lords had remained hidden, their presence only hinted at in ancient myths and arcane texts scattered across the galaxy. They were masters of manipulation and subterfuge, pulling the strings from the shadows, never directly intervening, always remaining above the fray. But now, they saw a new player on the field, humanity. And humanity's rise threatened their centuries-old plans. The WYRM Lords had one guiding principle: the galaxy was their domain. The status quo must never be disrupted, and the balance of power must always remain under their control. Humanity, with its rapid technological advancements, fierce independence, and undying resolve, was an unpredictable force. They were not to be allowed to rise unchecked. The WYRM Lords decided that humanity must be controlled or eradicated. Back on Earth, Marcus and Emily were beginning to look beyond the political landscape and their victories within the Galactic Union. Humanity's influence was growing, and their seat at the table was secure. But what they didn't know was that a storm was gathering, a storm unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. It began subtly, with a series of mysterious disappearances. Several colonies, far from Earth but within human-controlled space, went silent. Communications failed, military installations fell, and entire systems were abandoned without warning. The common thread was a sudden, unexplainable disruption of all technology in the affected areas: ships disabled, weapons systems malfunctioning, and infrastructure collapsing in an eerie, deliberate pattern. Emily Cross was the first to realize something wasn't right. Her diplomatic instincts told her that these events weren't random. The loss of communication was too precise, too coordinated to be a simple malfunction. The galaxy's most sophisticated species had never seen anything like it. It was almost as if an unseen force was manipulating reality itself. Marcus Kane, too, felt the stirrings of something deeper. He had fought countless battles, faced insurmountable odds, but something about this new threat felt different. It wasn't just an external enemy, It was as though the very fabric of space itself was being warped. They convened an emergency meeting of the Human Leadership Council. Emily's face was grim as she addressed the room, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We are facing something we've never encountered before," she began. "This isn't just a military threat. It's something more, something ancient. These disappearances aren't a coincidence. They're a message." Marcus nodded. "And it's a message that says humanity is being watched. We've become a threat to someone, or something, out there. This isn't just a war. This is a warning." The warning came in the form of an invasion. It was unlike any human conflict before. The first signs were massive gravitational shifts, entire star systems experiencing inexplicable fluctuations in their orbits. Ships began to vanish without a trace, their debris scattering like dust in the wind. One by one, entire human colonies fell into darkness, their populations wiped out in what appeared to be instantaneous, impossible strikes. Some ships reported encountering strange energy fields that tore through them like paper, while others experienced complete systems failures as though a force far beyond their comprehension had manipulated the very laws of physics. And then, one day, a signal was received, a message that sent a ripple of fear through the galactic network. "The WYRM Lords are watching. Your rise is our fall. You have been warned." No one knew what it meant. No one had ever heard of the WYRM Lords outside of the ancient texts. The true nature of the WYRM Lords was soon revealed. Their ships, gigantic, serpentine constructs of black metal and shifting light, appeared on the edge of human-controlled space. They were colossal, far larger than anything humanity had ever encountered, their shapes seemingly fluid, constantly shifting between forms, as if they were not bound by the same laws of physics that governed the rest of the galaxy. The WYRM Lords did not fight like traditional enemies. They didn't use brute force or advanced weaponry. Instead, they used subtle, insidious methods, mind control, manipulation of reality, and the bending of time and space itself. Entire human fleets were incapacitated with a single touch. Entire armies reduced to disarray as their thoughts were clouded by an overwhelming psychic presence. Humanity's technology, designed to protect them from all but the most advanced threats, was useless. The WYRM Lords could bend it to their will, turning it against its users. The very concept of reality seemed to warp in their presence, leaving humanity with no choice but to fight in a war that was not just physical, but metaphysical. In response, Marcus and Emily called upon every resource at their disposal. They couldn't fight this enemy in the traditional sense. This battle would require something entirely new, humanity's creativity and adaptability. Marcus began to rally humanity's best minds, scientists, engineers, philosophers, and military tacticians, to develop new strategies to counteract the WYRM Lords' methods. Emily, leveraging her skills in diplomacy, reached out to the galaxy's other species, urging them to set aside old grudges and unite against this existential threat. It wasn't enough to merely hold the line. The WYRM Lords were a force that could not be reasoned with, only confronted. In a daring move, Emily Cross initiated the largest alliance the galaxy had ever seen. Every race, from the most ancient to the newest, sent ships, soldiers, and resources to the human cause. And it was then, in the face of the greatest threat humanity had ever known, that Earth's legacy would truly be tested. Humanity's response would be the defining moment of their place in the stars. Would they rise to meet this challenge, or would they fall to the ancient forces that sought to control the galaxy? As Marcus Kane stood at the head of the largest fleet ever assembled, his voice echoed across the calms, a simple message to the galaxy. We fight, for the future, for our place in the stars. And in that moment, the galaxy knew humanity's ascendance had only just begun. The wrath of the WYRM Lords. The galaxy was on the precipice of an unprecedented conflict. The WYRM Lords, ancient, unfathomable beings who bent the very fabric of space and time, had emerged from the depths of forgotten history. Their message was clear: humanity's rise had threatened the delicate balance of power across the stars, and they would not allow it to continue. But humanity, though young by galactic standards, had already proven time and again that it was not easily defeated. Marcus Kane, Emily Cross, and the countless soldiers, diplomats, and thinkers who had stood by them knew that this fight would not be won through conventional means. The WYRM Lords were not a species that could be defeated with firepower alone, they were a force of nature, a living embodiment of entropy and chaos. But humanity had something they lacked: adaptability. The first step was to understand the WYRM Lords' true nature. Their ships, seemingly alive, shifting and pulsating with otherworldly energy, were not bound by the same rules as human technology. Any conventional weaponry had little effect against them. Their presence warped the space around them, and their psychic abilities, strong enough to control entire fleets with a single thought, made them formidable in ways that traditional combat could not address. At Earth's command center, Marcus and Emily convened with the galaxy's greatest minds. The stakes were higher than ever. There was no room for error. The WYRM Lords had already begun to attack human colonies with disturbing precision, targeting planets that were critical to humanity's infrastructure. Their attacks were unlike anything seen before, not explosions or bombardments, but a slow, suffocating manipulation of reality itself. "They're not just attacking our ships," Emily said, her voice tense as she analyzed the data. "They're warping entire systems. Time, space, nothing is stable in their presence. It's as if they're rewriting the laws of the universe itself." "I've seen it before," Marcus replied, his brow furrowed. "Not the WYRM Lords, but something like it, an old Earth legend, the entropy that devours everything. It was a myth, something my grandmother used to tell me about, an unstoppable force that drags everything into darkness, beyond the reach of light or hope." "Then it's no myth," Emily said. "It's real, and they're bringing it to us." The first assault on a major human colony came from the WYRM Lords' massive ships, their forms twisting and changing as they descended upon a strategic outpost. The human defense forces had no time to react before their ships were immobilized, frozen in time, their crews unable to move or communicate. The WYRM Lords' psychic waves affected the minds of everyone aboard, overwhelming them with visions of utter chaos and despair. To the galaxy's surprise, the humans did not panic. Instead, they adapted. They had always been able to turn adversity into strength. Marcus Kane and Emily Cross, along with the newly formed Galactic Coalition, devised a counteroffensive not based on firepower, but on ingenuity. "We need to think beyond technology," Marcus said during the War Council. "The WYRM Lords are manipulating reality itself. If we try to fight them in the conventional way, we'll lose. We need to disrupt their control, create a way to fight back against their manipulation of time and space." It was the scientists of the coalition who uncovered a breakthrough, a theory that human ingenuity could counteract the WYRM Lords' psychic influence. By harnessing a new form of energy, called resonance energy, they could create a stasis field that disrupted the manipulation of spacetime and neutralized the WYRM Lords' abilities. But to generate enough power to create a field large enough to shield an entire fleet, humanity would need to take a massive risk. The plan was set into motion. Humanity's greatest minds, working with the best engineers and scientists from across the galaxy, constructed a prototype device, the resonance amplifier. It was a massive, experimental energy source capable of emitting a stasis field that would disrupt the WYRM Lords' hold on reality. The catch? The device had never been tested on such a large scale. Its energy output was unpredictable, and there was no guarantee it would work, or that the consequences wouldn't be catastrophic. "We have one shot," Emily said as she stood before the assembled leadership. "Once we deploy this device, it's either going to turn the tide of the war, or destroy us all." Marcus clenched his fist, feeling the weight of the decision. "We don't have a choice. We fight, or we perish." Earth didn't survive the Zorvith conflict by playing it safe. The moment of truth arrived. The massive fleet of the Galactic Coalition, led by human forces, engaged the WYRM Lords in a final confrontation above the colony of Eloria, a crucial human stronghold. The WYRM Lords' ships descended like an impenetrable cloud of shifting shadows. The battle began with an overwhelming wave of psychic pressure. Human minds were assaulted, their will to fight crushed by the oppressive weight of the WYRM Lord's presence. Then, the resonance amplifier was activated. A surge of brilliant light erupted from the human flagship, the Elysium. The amplifier pulsed with raw, untamed energy, sending ripples through the fabric of space itself. The stasis field enveloped the fleet, and the effect was immediate. The WYRM Lord's ships, which had once twisted reality to their will, now found themselves trapped in a moment, a suspended, frozen instant of time. The psychic influence of the WYRM Lords waned, their control faltering. The humans, temporarily immune to the disruption, found their strength returning. The fleet rallied, focusing their attacks on the vulnerable WYRM Lord ships. But the amplifier was not without its price. The energy required to maintain the stasis field was immense, and the device began to destabilize. The Elysium systems groaned under the strain, and the ship's hull began to crack from the internal pressure. Marcus and Emily watched as the battle unfolded, knowing that they were running out of time. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice grim. "We either win now, or everything we've built comes crashing down." With a final, coordinated strike, the human fleet launched everything they had at the nearest WYRM Lord ship. Explosions of pure energy rippled through space, their light shining brighter than 1,000 stars. The WYRM Lords, who had once seemed unstoppable, were now on the defensive. And in that moment, the universe shifted. The battle ended in silence. The WYRM Lords, though powerful beyond comprehension, were not invincible. The combination of human resilience, ingenuity, and the sacrifice of countless lives in the final stand had turned the tide. The WYRM Lords, though still alive, withdrew into the depths of space. They had tasted defeat, a defeat they would never forget. They left humanity, not as conquerors, but as equals, their plans for dominance shattered. The aftermath was a time of reflection and rebuilding. Humanity, having faced its greatest trial yet, stood victorious, but they knew that the galaxy would never be the same. They had proven their strength, but they had also learned that the cost of survival was steep. Emily Cross and Marcus Kane stood together on the balcony of the Galactic Council building, looking out over the stars. This war will be remembered as the moment humanity became more than just a species in the galaxy. Emily said softly, "We became a force of nature." Marcus nodded, "But there are still more challenges ahead. The galaxy is vast, and not everyone will welcome our rise. We've earned our place, but now, we'll need to defend it."